Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to our Saturday edition video, where we're going to be doing an upgrade and commander build video today on the Tier 8 French super heavy cruiser, the Cherbourg. So I'm going to look over the ship, we're going to look at the armor layout, talk about what type of ship the Cherbourg is, look at the modules, upgrades, consumables, and the commander. So let's get started. So first off, what type of cruiser is the Cherbourg? Well, if you're familiar with playing something like the Tier 8 Premium battleship, the Dunkirk, or the Strasbourg, it has a similar vibe to that when you're looking at the Tier 6 and Tier 7 battleship. Mainly because it's a variant off of the Dunkirk class of ships, if my understanding is correct. And that her armament of the main battery is all located in the front of the ship, and it has this really long reload time. So when we're looking at this ship in the video I talked about yesterday, I would define this cruiser more as a flank pusher. She doesn't play the role of just sitting back in back of the map, mid-back, let's say 15, 20 kilometers or 15, 17 kilometers away. Firing away. She's really good at being agile, using her speed to close in on targets, utilizing islands, and pushing those flanks. As soon as you find yourself in a crossfire, you're going to be in trouble with the Cherbourg. So looking at the armor, you have the fore and aft plating and the aft end plating are all covered in 25 millimeter. The hull casemate armor is 27 millimeter. Even the torpedo protection, while of course your superstructure is going to be kind of standard 16 millimeter. And then we look at the guns, 305 millimeter on the front, weaker on the side, and in the back 272, so it's all wraps around. The top of the turrets are very fragile, so I think it's actually possible to get them knocked out by dive bombers, let's say something like a German dive bomber. So you can angle for sure, and try to get battleships, cruisers to go for more your side. But when you show flat broadside, you're rather vulnerable, especially when we go to look at the Citadel, which is above waterline, and it goes just to the back of the rear part of the superstructure towards the front turret. So you can easily be citadeled, and when you face high tier battleships, you can be in a world of hurt rather quickly. So let's look at the modules of the Cherbourg. So module-wise, you have the 305 millimeter guns. They have a 28-second reload time. It's really poor in that regard. I think, honestly, I'd say that this needs to be several seconds need to be shaved off of, but I think the reason Wargaming for now has gone with this route is because of all the consumables that you get, which we'll talk about shortly. So let's keep going forward. So you have hull upgrade. You go from hull A to hull B. The difference being is that your hit points, you have a greater health pool going from 43,100 to 49,500. You also get a better AA defense and better maneuverability with your rudder shift time. In terms of the AA, think of it something similar to the Tier 8 light cruiser, British light cruiser, the Edinburgh. And that's the type of AA you're dealing with. Granted, you have 6 kilometer range AA. Something like that when you're looking at the stats overall. It's 67 with this current build. Gunfire range, you have 16.1 kilometers stock. You're going to upgrade that to 17.7, so you're not going to break through the 18 kilometer threshold. This can definitely be a disadvantage when you are playing the high tiers, tier 9, tier 10, but as I discussed, this is really to close in and work the flanks, utilize islands, so this really doesn't become much of a problem because you can't play this ship as a standard cruiser back of the map, mid-spawn, sit by an island, because you'll just get wrecked, and we talked about that in yesterday's video, which I'll link at the end of this one. Propulsion, you have 130,000 horsepower, so you have 31.9 knots. But if we go in and we mount the Sierra Mike combat signal, we're going to get a buff on our speed, which is going to bring us up to 33.5 knots. Now, we can get this up even further with the engine boost, so let me just highlight that. It gives you a speed increase of plus 20%. So they have some engine boosts that will range from where they are percentage-wise. So 33.5 times the 20%. So it's going to give you 6.7 seconds. 33.5 plus 6.7, which means you're braking through 40.2 knots. So that's actually really fun. You saw in the beginning of the clip yesterday, I was talking about how I was keeping pace with a Georgia Tier 9 Premium American battleship known for its speed with the engine boost. So this definitely can close the distance on ships rather quickly and catch players off guard. In terms of the armaments, we're going to look at a few things here as I've been testing this ship out. I have the main armaments modification 1 mounted purely for the main battery. Okay, we don't have torpedoes on the Cherbourg, but the risk of the main battery becoming incapacitated is negative 20%. Main battery survivability plus 50%, and main battery repair time negative 20%. With these French guns, you can find yourself having the main battery incapacitated, and if one of your 2 guns becomes incapacitated, that's half of your firepower instantly damaged or prevented. So your DPM will drop, and you're not as can't play as aggressive with the main turret knocked out. So really, you want to go for the main armaments modification 1, in my opinion. And also, when we were looking at the ship, when we were looking at the armor of the guns, I guess they're already up. 3 and 5 in the front, yeah, but it gets weaker on the side, and especially if you have a shell come in on the top, it can easily incapacitate your main battery, in my opinion and experience thus far. You have auxiliary armaments modification 1, secondary battery survivability plus 100, AA mount survivability plus 100. This ship isn't played for secondaries, I would say, in my opinion. While in terms of a cruiser, it actually does have decent secondaries. When we look at the secondary battery range, right now it's 7.6, and we could even buff that out as an example and get it to 8 kilometers. And there's some other skills we could take to buff the range a little bit more. But in my opinion, no, you want to protect your main battery. That's your main source of damage. AA, if you want to play more of an AA ship, you would do something more like the Cleveland, the Tier 8 American light cruiser, because it's much better AA than what you find here on the Cherbourg. Magazine modification. This reduces the risk of your ship's magazine detonating by negative 70%. If you're playing ranked random clan battles, I would recommend taking the Juliet Charlie combat signal. It completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. We have this new game mode right now, Convoy. I've actually not been running it in Convoy, but it's up to you. As a side note, damage control party modification 1 increases the action time of your damage control party by plus 40%. So right now it's 5 seconds, so you would be getting to under 7 seconds still. I'm doing 5, yes, something like that. Yeah, 7 seconds. So I don't recommend that. This is just a fast damage control party. It's not long lasting by any means. Again, protect the main battery. That's what you want to go for. For slot 2, you have several things going on because you have a lot of different consumables that you can swap out to here on the Cherbourg, which we'll get into. For the standard upgrade, I would say go for you could probably do either the damage control system modification 1 or the engine room protection. Honestly, before I had preventive maintenance on the Cherbourg, what am I wanting to say? Last stand, that's right. Before I had last stand mounted, I actually had my engine and steering gears get knocked out multiple times, so that's why I finally put last stand on the commander as I was experimenting with the build a bit. So you can easily find your steering gears get incapacitated, so I would probably lean a bit more towards this. Alternatively, damage control system modification is not bad. You're just think of yourself as a tier 8 Dunkirk. I mean, you're just but you're still a cruiser, not a battleship. You're a super heavy cruiser. So you could mitigate your risk of catching fire and flooding. So for the two standard upgrades, I would recommend the engine room protection first and foremost. Now, you have three special upgrades that you can mount. You can do the engine boost modification, the hydroacoustic search modification, or the defensive AA fire modification, because we can switch over to that. Of the three, the two I would recommend first and foremost would be either the engine boost modification or the hydroacoustic search modification 1. Now, the reason why I'm going to recommend the hydroacoustic search modification 1 first and foremost is because you have a longer action time on your hydroacoustic search. Well, right now our action time is 120 seconds. Otherwise, it would be, well, I'm assuming closer to 100 seconds, something like that. When you have the hydroacoustic search modification 1 and it lasts even longer, it really helps you when you're pushing the flank in conjunction with your engine boost, especially if you're having to deal with a destroyer. I've ran into multiple destroyers while trying to push a flank, and having the hydroacoustic search last that a little bit longer has helped, because it helps avoid torpedoes because you have really good rudder shift time, so on and so forth. So that's what I would recommend. Secondly, the engine boost modification 1, which increases your action time by plus 30%. You can see that right now we have an action time of 180 seconds. So I think I did the math in my head right now, but I'll check. But you would be able to get that to, you'd be able to add 54 seconds. So 180 plus 54. So you have 234 seconds of the action time of the engine boost, okay? If I did my math right. So that's cool, because then that's even longer lasting. But I kind of like the idea of having the hydroacoustic search, which can detect ships up to 5 kilometers, so you can pick up a destroyer sitting in a smoke screen as an example, get that extra volley in that you need, and you can detect torpedoes up to 3.5 kilometers away. So yeah, so number 1, number 2, number 3. That's in that order of what I'd recommend. For the third slot, we have several options going on. With the Commander 2, I have Grease the Gears, which we'll talk about shortly. But I went ahead and thought, you know what, let's test out the main battery modification 2. So I have an even faster main battery traverse speed. So when we're looking at the artillery, our 180-degree turn time is 21.7 seconds. So it's actually pretty good. Usually when you're coming in on targets, because of your turrets, they're all in the front. I don't know if I necessarily see this as being a huge deal not to have. So I'm going to go ahead and just demount it for the fun of it real quick, and we're going to look at some things. So without it, it's 180-degree turn time of 25 seconds, which feels a bit more like a battleship per se. You also have secondary battery modification. This extends your secondary battery firing range by plus 20% and reduces your maximum battery shell dispersion by negative 20%. So if it's 8 kilometers now, do some math again, you can add 8 plus 1.6. So you had 9.6 kilometers with the secondaries, which if you're having to disengage from a flank, fall back more, that's nice. I mean, there's been the tier 9 French battleship, the Jean Bart, is kind of known for having secondary builds. So I'm not saying secondary builds are out of the question here on the Cherbourg. What you're going to be fighting with is that most of your secondaries are on the rear of your ship, okay? So we kind of go around here, see where they're all at. So it's kind of like when you're having to run kite away, you're not going to have your secondaries too much in action when you're pushing in. Besides these two here is probably where you're going to see the most action from first. So it's nice. I mean, you kind of saw the secondary kill that I got from one of these front secondary turrets on the Incomparable yesterday, which was really funny, kind of like a meme. So if your goal is to push in on the flank, I just don't know how much use you're going to be out of your secondaries when you're pushing that flank. So that I'm just kind of saying that up front. This is a new line that we're getting just introduced into the game, still in early access. but it could be worth exploring. But when I think about it, there's other ships that I would rather push in with, Massachusetts at tier 8, right? That just do that role better, per se, with the secondaries, at least. You also have AA Guns Modification 1. Priority A, sector preparation time, -20%. This is an AA cruiser. If you want an AA cruiser, do something like a light cruiser like the Cleveland, the Rochester, even Baltimore is better. Aiming Systems Modification 1. The main battery shell dispersion is reduced by -7%, and you get a slight buff on your secondary battery firing range by +5, and maximum secondary battery shell dispersion, -5. So we could buff that secondary range slightly, but the main goal, if you will, with this upgrade is the main battery shell dispersion being reduced. So that means your vertical and horizontal dispersion are becoming tighter. And then you have this thing, it's called sigma. I'm not sure what the sigma is. I'll just put it in like a little bar on the bottom of the screen here, along with the horizontal and vertical dispersion without this skill on the bottom. But this doesn't impact sigma. Sigma is just the chances of your shell landing where you're aiming in the center of the target, where this skill, the shell dispersion, it reduces your maximum horizontal dispersion and your maximum vertical dispersion, making the shells even tighter. So that's kind of the win here with the Aiming Systems Modification 1. Okay, so I've been taking this. This has been really fun. It's worked well. I'm not saying this is a bad, but if I was going to take two skills here, I'd either do this one or the Aiming Systems Modification 1. So for the heck of it, we're just going to go ahead and mount it. We can even see what the secondary value turns into, 8.4 kilometers. Kind of humorous. But to have that tighter shell dispersion, maybe you get to land that salvo on a broadside cruiser just that little bit better. I'll probably throw a comment up in on the video once it's on YouTube to say what my final conclusion between these two are, but they're both good. This just helps prevent an enemy target ship being able to outmaneuver you. I've not had that issue with the skill mounted. This has been just fine, but we'll test out the Aiming Systems Modification 1. This usually is a pretty tried and true one that I mount often. All right, talking too long. Okay, now this cruiser line has been a new experience for me, okay? I've been trying to get my head wrapped around it. It's challenged me. I've had to kind of reapproach when I first had this line. Right now, I have the Propulsion Modification 1 mounted, okay? Time taken to reach full engine power when accelerating, -50%. As I've played, and I was looking over some of the footage and just reflecting, I actually don't know how much I would personally would like to have this skill. I like this skill on cruisers that do have engine boost, yes, and we have that here. But also when I'm trying to more juke salvos and things of that nature. I don't think I see the full value of having that here on the Cherbourg. Maybe I change my mind later on. But we were talking about this maneuverability, right? So right now the rudder shift time is 12.5. If we take steering gears modification 1, we can get that down to what should be 10 seconds. I'll just confirm real quick. 20%. Yeah. So we can get our rudder shift time down to 10 seconds. So able to maneuver, dodge torpedoes more easily, dodge those incoming salvos from battleships as we push in or we're running away. That's really nice in my mind. The other thing I was wondering about is because when you're pushing the flanks, so on and so forth, it's this it's kind of been a mix for me so far, where I've been focused a lot and then I haven't been focused in other terms when I'm pushing the flank. So you can increase your tankiness with the damage control system modification 2, which puts out fires quicker. Your flooding recovery time is quicker. Because when you're pushing on the flank, you can be taking a lot of attention. So you're just kind of bolstering your defense, your survivability, right? So I would say first and foremost, it'd be either the steering gears modification 1 or the damage control system modification 2. Because once you're pushing the flank, you're really not letting off the gas, and engine boost helps you be so responsive anyhow that I don't think I would actually recommend taking the propulsion modification 1 here on the Cherbourg after testing it out. I think getting your fire duration times down is really good. And I think even the rudder shift would be rather viable as well. And I have, in yesterday's video, Doombeagle was running the steering gears modification 1. That's what he does. So I've seen it. It does really well. 10-second rudder shift time. I'm going to test out the damage control system modification 2. I would say this one or this one. And I can also throw in the comments my experience with this after I test it out a bit more. For the 5th slot, I would recommend taking the Concealment Systems Modification 1. Your ship's detectability range, -10%. Squadron detectability range, -10%. Dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship, +5%. Okay, so right now, Concealment would be 12.7. I need to mount a Camouflage, so I've been running this one as an example. That gets us down to 12.3. And that is good. Especially when you have, with this upgrade, the dispersion is increased by enemies attacking your ship by +5%. That is good for you. So I would recommend this, especially as you saw again yesterday's video when I had to disengage from the flank. I pushed it, it didn't work out. Doom and I had to back off. The concealment helped. Otherwise, I think I could have died there. It may have happened, okay? You also have steering gears modification 2, so you can get that rudder shift time down to even more ridiculous speeds, but you're sacrificing concealment. Keep that in mind. And then torpedo lookout system, assured acquisition range of torpedoes at 1.8 kilometers. The only reason why I really mention this is because you can tack that on with a hydroacoustic search, which kind of bolsters your detection range even more of picking up torpedoes. Still, I think this is because once you are detected at 12.3 kilometers away pushing, assuming you're not firing, you close the window, the gap really quickly with the engine boost. So I would recommend this. This kind of looks more like a battleship build in a sense with the upgrades. And I think that's true just because it feels really similar to me to the Dunkirk, the Strasbourg, Tier 6 and Tier 7. When you're trying to work around this robust health pool at 49,500 at Tier 8, and this trying to pare down the damage you take long term with the fires and flooding. Mostly the fires is what's particularly on my mind when taking this skill, just because you have this really long reload time, right? 28 seconds, but we're going to talk about that more here in just a moment. So consumable-wise, damage control party standard, 5-second, reload time 60 seconds, what you're going to find here on the Tier 8 cruisers. You have a repair party. I've taken superintendent, otherwise you would see 3, 3, 3, and 4. So having that additional heal is great. You have an HP per second of 247. If we mount the India Delta combat signal, which increases the amount of HP that can be recovered when the repair party consumable is activated to 297. So in my opinion, that is really good, really nice to have. You have engine boost and fighter, engine boost, engine boost, engine boost, engine boost, engine boost. That's what you want to run. Because of being able to close the distance and being a flank pusher, it's really what this ship is about. So being able to take engine boost, I think, is 10 times better than taking fighter, especially with your maneuverability. You can dodge some strikes from enemy aircraft, and fighters never protect you from the first attack, right? They just take a couple fighters out after their initial run. And if you're dealing with Russian carriers, fighters mean nothing because they have this small radius of 3 kilometers. So engine boost is what you want. Hydroacoustic search, defensive AA. Again, I'm going to say the hydroacoustic search for reasons of destroyers. Now you have submarines in the game and so forth. So this is really valuable, much more so than defensive AA fire, which again, this is never going to stop the first strike. You can never prevent it. So why try to fight for it? In my mind, when we're talking about the Cherbourg here. So hydroacoustic search is what I'd recommend 10 times over because of the detection of torpedoes 3.5 kilometers away. and detection of ships 5 kilometers away. So you might pick up that submarine under the water or that destroyer in a smoke screen when you close the distance. Then you have this main battery reload booster. Main battery reload time is reduced by -50%. Consumable action time, 15 seconds. Reload time, 80 seconds. So the reload time on this is not bad. For waiting for this consumable to become activated again. The action duration time of the this main battery reload booster, it's not the longest, 15 seconds. It does help you get that extra salvo off, and you saw me utilize this multiple times in yesterday's video. It's a really nice consumable, so don't be shy to use it, especially if you're taking Superintendent, because you get 5 of them at that point. So let's talk about the commander. So I need to show you where I picked this commander up because he is a seasoned commander. He has 2 skills, 2 enhanced skills. So let's go to the armory. And we'll go to commanders. We'll go down. So right here, so for 1,500 doubloons, I picked him up, and he has enhanced grease the gears, and then he has enhanced adrenaline rush. And for just the 1,500 coal, that's pretty good in my opinion. I don't remember if they also had a coal version. No, it doesn't look like it. So that's where you pick him up. So in looking at him, to have your main battery traverse speed plus 20% is nice versus what it would be stock. Stock, I'm imagining it's just 15%. Yeah, just 15%. So plus 20% is really nice. And then your adrenaline rush, 0.25% instead of 0.20%, means I'm able to get those shots off quicker, as this skill is activated once you begin losing for each 1% of your HP lost. Okay, so I think this guy works really well on the Cherbourg. Okay, so let's talk about the commander skills I'm going to take. I'm trying to be very mindful of the time right now. I spent a lot of time talking about other things. So for your first 10 points, what would I recommend? I'm just trying to think of the value. So for first 10 points, honestly, I'd probably go Last Stand, because when I didn't have the skill mounted, I've lost my steering gears multiple times, and maybe I've just put a fire out, multiple fires, and not being able to use my rudder shift to correct myself and sailing into an island or things like that can be really frustrating. So I recommend taking Last Stand first. And then for a 3-point commander, I have just run the priority target. This has actually been really helpful for me. When we looked at the armor layout, this isn't a tanky cruiser by any means. She's coded in that 25mm to 27mm plating. And when you're being really focused, it helps, especially because this ship, again, it's a flank pusher. So when you start catching a lot of attention, maybe it's time to cut the throttle or use that rudder shift to turn around if you have 4, 5, 6 ships targeting you. So this just helps you have that awareness of when I need to stop pushing, right? And back off. And then I would say the adrenaline rush, just because this 28-second reload time is really dismal on the Cherbourg. I think it still needs to come down more, so we'll see what Wargaming does if they do any decide to buff it in an upcoming development blog after some testing and such. So when you have the enhanced skill, you're getting your reload down even quicker. Where you saw in yesterday's video, I think I was, when I was low on health, I was down to almost 21 seconds, but that's also due to another skill I've taken. Then for 10 point, I would recommend taking the Concealment Expert, which reduces your ship's detectability range down to that 12.3 kilometers when we have a camouflage mounted on the ship that also reduces detectability range, okay? So this is what I recommend for 10 points. And then for an 11-point commander, I'd recommend picking up Grease the Gears. A 14-point commander, I would recommend picking up Superintendent. This gives you that additional main battery reload booster, hydroacoustic search, engine boost, and repair party. The consumables we have mounted right now on the ship. Very helpful. Definitely recommend it. And then after 14 point with a 18 point commander, I would recommend the top grade gunner. Now, alternatively, after you pick up the 10 points, you could just wait, and then for your 14th point, pick up the top grade gunner, as an example, okay? But I recommend kind of going this route as an example, or maybe you could go these three, grease the gears, and then top grade gunner, okay? The reason why I recommend this skill, I'm going to recommend it 10 times over, is because your main battery reload time is just terrible, okay? So what does this skill do? Permanent effect, secondary battery reload time, negative 10%. So that's just a permanent effect that we have that gets our secondaries firing every 4.3 seconds. And then the can be activated effect is reducing your main battery reload time down by negative 8%. Increases the reload speed of the main battery if there is a visible enemy ship within your ship's standard detectability range. So if there's an enemy ship within 12.3 kilometers of me, this skill gets activated and my reload starts looking a bit better. So the main battery, so as we were saying, it has a 28-second reload time. And then we get down to that 0.8. You shave 2.24 seconds off. So 28 minus 2.24. 25.76 second reload time on the main battery. You throw in Adrenaline Rush, Enhanced Adrenaline Rush at that, then your reload time can be looking more like 24, 23, 22 seconds, okay? And then you throw in the main battery reload booster, you're looking pretty good there when you're in those close fight engagements. And you saw this skill being demonstrated to you in yesterday's video, which made the ship much more tolerable for me, and I enjoyed playing it more with the top grade gunner versus without. So I would really recommend you pick up the top grade gunner. I think it is a must on the Cherbourg. Let's see how it looks like on the tier 9 and tier 10 cruiser in this line, but I'm going to suspect the same. And then I have 3 points left. Where would I recommend putting my last 3 points? I would recommend putting it into the heavy AP shell. So your main battery AP shell damage with a main battery caliber of 190 millimeters and above goes up by plus 5%. We have 305 millimeter guns on the Cherbourg. So we're going to look at the AP damage. So if you look at the very bottom, maximum damage 8,200. We pick that skill up, we're looking at 8,610. So additional plus 410 because as I talked in yesterday's video, the armor piercing is really good. It keeps catching me off guard. I don't think it should do as much damage, or I just, not that I don't think, I just don't, it surprises me. I'm always pleasantly surprised with how well the armor piercing thus far has been performing on the Cherbourg, where I do more damage than what I thought should be possible with these 305 millimeter guns. But it's French, and the AP tends to be good with this line. So I would recommend that because you're dishing out even more delicious damage when you're pushing that flank and drawing on close, slapping broadsides of cruisers. And as you saw in yesterday's video, we were citadeling in Iowa, we were citadeling a Yamato, right? So I think this build here has some very good potential, all said and done, once we've reached 21 point build, okay? If you're asking me if there's another option I would take, you kind of heard me throughout the video yesterday talking about, oh, it would have been nice to have had AP loaded here. Oh, it would have been nice of having AP loaded here. I said that multiple times. So having gun feeder to switch out, time taken to switch between shell types minus 50% is nice because, you know, instead of having 28 second, I'm not going to sit there to do a 28 second reload when I'm going to come out around on a cruiser in 15 seconds, right? But when you take this skill, it cuts down that shell, switching shell type much quicker, okay? So I could see the value in this. Let's say you didn't want to do super heavy AP, so you could do that. And then you'd be like, Flimsy, what would you do with your last 2 points? Probably I would throw it in on the Consumables enhancements, which I don't always recommend this skill. Because your hydroacoustic surge would last longer, your engine boost would last longer. So it kind of pairs well with what the ship is already doing good and how it is designed, okay? So this would be my second option. First being the heavy AP shells, and then second being this. This is what I'd recommend. Okay, so this video is already getting close to 35 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and call it at that. So I hope you appreciated this upgrade commander build video with the Cherbourg. This isn't your standard typical cruiser in the game, but it is a flank pusher and she does really well at it. So I hope you appreciated this commentary. If you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you did not, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you have already subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.